Okay, and welcome back to the how-to videos for the unboxing of the Build a Cure Play Test It Forward. If you were in the first one, you kind of saw that we separated out all the decks. Now I wanted to go over just a few of the details from the cards. So, as we mentioned before, you will have the disease deck and the resource deck. Now the disease draw cards will be shuffled into the resource deck, and essentially this is what's going to signify when you have to pull a card from the disease pile. The easy things to note right here is each person, you'll probably want a turn guide and an element count when you first start the game. This will kind of go through and just tell you exactly what you need to do for each turn. So the first thing you want to do is collect any markers that are still out, and so these are the markers, or tokens as we call them. You can use pretty much anything you want. If you have a special game that you like the meeples from or something like that, go ahead and just use those. These are mainly just cheat fillers until we get the final game launched. Next, you'll pick up 2 cards and you'll play up to 3 actions. You can either then do any one of these actions as an action. You can place an element card, which would be something similar to like nitrogen, or you can use a bonding card, which would look just like this. You can give a card to another player's hand. So this would be in the event that you don't want to play nitrogen just yet. Maybe somebody else, it'd be more strategic for them to play, so you could hand it to them, and it would then be in their hand limit. And then you can skip or discard. So the last item here is one of the most important things, is all players have to discard down to card limit. So for the majority of the games, your card limit is going to be 5. And let's say I wanted to give someone this nitrogen and that brings them up to 6. The reason why we have this here is for the strategy of the game. Because it is a cooperative game, you will be working together with everybody else to try to beat the game. And so this is the negative side of it, is you really have to watch how many cards you have in your hand, because you might have to end up discarding something that's really useful for you. So that's the turn guide. Next you can take a look at the element counts and the disease counts. So this will, on the back of the element count is where you're going to have the disease count, and you'll have an element count on the back of the turn guide. This way you can have both of these cards up together in front of you, because it's going to be very important to read both of these. If you see on the left side, it'll tell you how many elements are available in what quantity. So if you guys can read it, it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 10, 15, 20. And then you'll have carbon for red, hydrogen for blue, nitrogen for green, oxygen for kind of like a aqua, and the sulfur for more of an olive color. For example, a carbon 1, there's 5 of them available in the deck. Or for a sulfur 1, there's only 2 of them. So pretty easily you can see that there's not very many sulfurs, there's not very many nitrogens, but there's going to be plenty of hydrogens, carbons, and oxygens in the makeup of the game. Next, you'll have the diseases, so scurvy, malaria, arsenic poisoning, anthrax, glanders poison, and avian influenza. And if you see, it also has the same kind of setup with carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and sulfur columns. This will show you how many of them are needed to complete the disease. If you look at the very bottom, you will see the total elements and the total atoms. So the elements on the element card will tell you how many actual physical cards there are. So there's 19 different carbon cards, 18 hydrogen, and so on and so forth. Then below that you have the total atoms. So if you notice, there's a few of these that do not match up perfectly. Now that is on purpose. We want it to be a little bit harder for the hydrogen and a little bit easier for the sulfur, just because we don't want you to sit there waiting for a sulfur and the whole game, and it just kind of gets boring. So there's reasons why some of these are off a little bit, but for the most part, the carbon is exact, nitrogen is exact, oxygen is exact, sulfur and hydrogen are just slightly off. Now what this tells you is if you went through every single disease in this deck, it's potential that you could solve all of them without having to recycle other than the hydrogen. You will need one more than there is available. So that's where the strategy really comes into play for those who are going to be big into figuring out the best possible combinations for it. So anyway, that is the general idea of the disease, element count, and the turn guide. So we'll see you in the next few videos just explaining maybe some of the cards.